Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 of our 5-part video series, The Hero's Journey, where we're just getting together to do a deep dive into Joseph Campbell's amazing book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. So last time in our first video, we thought about Joseph Campbell, his life, his times, and how as a child of the early 20th century, he fell in love with literature and with Native American culture, and that led to him becoming the most preeminent scholar of mythology, really, in the English-speaking world. And he left behind for us such a treasure trove of work. This book that we're studying here is his very first book, but there are dozens to follow after that, of course. So we thought about the hero's journey, which, let's keep this simple. You know, as we go through these 5 videos, plenty of nuance and depth and detail is going to arise all on its own. So maybe together you and I can kind of make a deal with each other to keep this clear and keep it simple. Think of the hero's journey as a circle. You know, you start at home, there's the departure, there's the initiation, and then there's the return. So those are the 3 main cycles of the moments on the cycle of the monomyth. And within those 3 major stages, departure, initiation, and return, are 17 sub-stages. So today we begin, and we're going to start with the departure. But one last piece from last time that I want to remind you of. Let's keep a hold of those 3 keys, or 3 lenses, if you prefer, whatever analogy you like. The literal lens, the psychological lens, and the spiritual or philosophical lens. In other words, let's look at each moment of the hero's journey, each substage, as it literally shows up in the story. You know, Dorothy literally leaving home on her bike and meeting the medicine man and getting caught in the tornado, you know, all that literal plot stuff. And then let's think about the psychological element, because again, Campbell's really coming from so much from that Freudian and Jungian perspective. And thirdly, let's also keep open the possibility that the pedagogical power of the hero's journey stories, the teaching power, is their ability to convey crucial information, life wisdom. And I don't know about you, but I'm certainly very interested in looking for that wherever I can find it, and especially in the hero's journey stories, because that is, those are ripe pickings. You know, there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom and truth scattered through these hero journey stories. So let's keep those 3 tiers of interpretation alive as well: literal, psychological, and spiritual or philosophical. And so today, the first of the 3 major moments on the monomyth cycle, and that is the departure with its 5 substages: the call to adventure, the refusal of the call, the supernatural aid, the crossing of the first threshold, and the belly of the whale. So let's drop in with each of those. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start with the call to adventure. So here, our would-be hero, and again, let's keep this gender neutral, right? We're not going to bother with the cumbersome hero and heroine binary. Let's just take it as a given that the hero's journey is a human journey, open to people of all gender identifications. All right, enough said. So here at the initial moment of the hero's journey, the call to adventure. Here, the hero is sort of blissfully unaware of their impending adventure, and they're safely ensconced in the familiar world of culture and domesticity, and their lives are defined by convention and paralyzed by protection. You know, think Dorothy on the farm, just a little kid surrounded by adults, and that mean lady, you know, who doesn't like her dog. And think Jumping Mouse, if you know that story, the story of Jumping Mouse. He's there with all the other busy mice. They're just counting seeds, working in the seed warehouse. You know, nothing much going on. You don't have any inkling about what's about to break open. But beneath the surface, there's discontent, there's unrest, there's dissatisfaction, and a growing restlessness that, although everything kind of seems okay, it's not okay. There are wounds inside and there are wounds outside that need healing, but we haven't even named or identified those wounds yet. But there's a kind of pregnant pause here in the first phase, the call to adventure. Then comes the call. Now, if you're Moses, it's a burning bush and God is literally telling you to go to Egypt and let his people go. If you're Abraham in the book of Genesis, God again is literally telling you, leave the land of your fathers and go to the place that I will show you. So those are two sort of epic biblical examples of a literal call coming from God. That's pretty clear. Most of us don't get that, right? So in a lot of the stories, the call comes from without. It comes from outside. Buddha also, sneaks out of the palace as a privileged, young, wealthy, cloistered kid, never seen suffering, never seen anything like death or pain. And he leaves the palace and he sees the four passing sights: the old man, the diseased man, the dying, the corpse on the pallet, and then he sees a monk. So these four passing sights are used in the legend of the Buddha to be the demarcation point. This makes it impossible for him to go back to his ordinary life. So however the call shows up. Now, that's the literal level, right? On the psychological level, we have to think about the call a little more subtly. What if we just thought of it this way, that it is the restlessness that arises within you when whatever this is just not enough anymore. And something is sort of calling you, your bigger life, your more unbounded life, your more authentic life. So far, you've been living a life that somebody else prescribed for you, following somebody else's conventions. And there's something inside of your soul that is asking for more. What if we just thought of the call to adventure as a kind of inner restlessness that I don't know where I'm going, but I can't stay here. So whatever form the call to adventure takes, that's where it begins. Now, the second phase is just connected right to that, the refusal of the call, number 2. So the refusal of the call is, any person with any sense is going to say, no, I don't think so. Frodo, when Gandalf comes to Frodo in The Lord of the Rings and said, I got a mission for you. Here's this magic ring that makes you invisible, but don't put it on because then the Dark Lord can see you and he'll kill you. And all the while, this magic ring is going to mess with your head. And I need you to, I know you're only a 3-foot tall hobbit, but I need you to walk across Middle-earth and walk into Mordor and throw this ring into the volcano in which it was for. Anyway, it's an impossible quest if you know Lord of the Rings. And with good reason, Frodo's like, are you sure you've got the right guy or the right hobbit? Just exactly like Moses, when God tells Moses as the burning bush in the book of Exodus to go down to Egypt and face the mighty Pharaoh. And Moses is like, I'm a shepherd. I've got a stick. What am I going to do against Pharaoh? It's like, you got the wrong guy, God. Have you seen my brother? He's a strapping lad, really clever, super smart, well-spoken. I have a stutter. You got the wrong guy. So, little note to all of you who are going to go out and write video games, graphic novels, screenplays, books, write movies. Make sure your hero is extremely reluctant at this phase, or it won't ring true. You never want your hero to get called and go, yeah, let's go. You always want your hero to be completely convinced that they are absolutely inadequate for the task. And also, it's often a sense of duty that keeps the hero stuck there, right? They have responsibilities. Oh, I got a job to do. My aunt needs me to take care of her. I had a student once who got a full ride scholarship to Stanford University, which is an extremely expensive private college. And she was all excited and she was ready to go, but it was just her and her mom. And her mom was a cancer patient. And her mom told her, you can't go. You have to stay here and take care of me. Now, I don't know that family, and I'm not passing any judgment, but I just think back on my old mom, who's now been gone for a long time, and I can't imagine that she would have said that. She would have said, you go. We'll find a way to work it out. But this young student of mine turned down her full ride to Stanford. I never knew what became of her, but she refused the call and had a damn good reason, right? I mean, taking care of her mom with cancer. I mean, obviously, those are conflicting. Those are two goods. It's not like good versus bad. A true moral dilemma. But my point is, if you can kind of look for examples in your own life where you've trotted out every reason why you shouldn't go do this thing. That's called the refusal of the call. We certainly see it with Jesus in the Garden at Gethsemane when he is being called to become the Son of God in the Christian story. And Jesus says to God, take this cup from my lips. I can't drink this. I can't go be this Jesus guy that you want me to be. So what a human moment in the story of Jesus. Jonah from the Bible as well refuses to go where God asks him to go, gets on a ship, and the storm comes and the guys on the ship throw him over and he goes into the water and the great fish swallows him up. We'll talk about the belly of the whale in a minute. So that's an important part of the story, the call to adventure and then the refusal of the call. But if the hero says yes, if the hero says, you know what, I'm going to take the chance and leave this and go answer the call. Once the hero commits, this is when it gets good. Once the hero commits, help always materializes. You can count on that. It's almost as if the universe itself responds to the courage and the willingness of our hero to say the holy word, yes. And when you say the holy yes, it's as if the whole universe gets the call. Here's how Ralph Waldo Emerson puts it, one of my favorite 19th century American writers. He says, when you make a decision, the universe conspires in your favor. When you make a decision, the universe conspires in your favor. That's a fun thing to test in your own life, by the way. Speaking about this again through that third lens, what wisdom can I draw out of this idea? Maybe I should start getting a little bit braver, start getting a little bit bolder about facing my fears. And realize that, as all the hero stories teach us, when the hero says yes and begins to move in the direction in which they are called, the path rises up before them. When you begin to trust and dare to live your authentic life, the right people show up, the right teachers, the right mentors show up, the right books show up, the right situations arise. The money has a weird way of working itself out. Look, in the stories, the supernatural aid is usually like literally a wizard, or for Harry Potter, it's a magic invisibility cloak, or it's a magic weapon. Frodo's ring that's trying to kill him all the time is also occasionally handy when he can put it on and become invisible for a couple of minutes to avoid getting killed. So some sort of supernatural aid like that always arises. And it's usually a person, Luke Skywalker I'm going to be talking mostly about episode 4, right? The first film, 1977, now called episode 4, A New Hope. Yeah. So in the very first Star Wars film, a very young Luke Skywalker on Tatooine, he has his little child life, he's playing with his toys, he's pissed off all the time, he's restless as hell. He wants to get out of there, but he doesn't know where he wants to go. And there's this Obi-Wan Kenobi guy, right? And you don't know who he is when you first meet him. He's just this kind of hermit that lives in the hills. And you have no idea that he's a Jedi master and he's been there the whole time to kind of watch Luke grow up from afar. And so that's another thing to notice, that the supernatural aid is usually something that's already in your life. You just haven't recognized it yet. Think about Frodo with Gandalf. All the hobbits think Gandalf is just like a party fireworks clown guy. He's just fun. They have no idea he's this 600-year-old wizard who's going to be an essential supernatural guide to the journey ahead. But here's the deeper meaning of the supernatural aid. It isn't about wizards and magic swords and invisibility cloaks and Jedi masters. What's it going to be for you and I? What's the supernatural aid in our life? Well, here's the deeper, both psychological and philosophical meaning of this third moment in the hero's cycle, the supernatural aid. Campbell writes on page 59 of The Hero with 1,000 Faces. He says, protective power is always and ever present within the sanctuary of the heart, and even imminent or within or just behind the unfamiliar features of the world. The protective power is within you. It's in your heart right now. It's not only within you, it's within everything around you. Nature itself. He goes on, one has only to know and trust, and the ageless guardians will appear. Having responded to his own call and continuing to follow courageously as the consequences unfold, the hero finds all the forces of the unconscious at his or her aid. Mother Nature herself supports the mighty task. Yeah. So let's keep expanding what this metaphor means. The whole cosmos becomes a quote-unquote supernatural aid as soon as you say the holy word yes. But that doesn't mean there aren't problems ahead. Let's get to stage 4. Crossing the first threshold. So this is the liminal stage, the in-between stage. You're not home anymore, but you're not exactly fully on the quest yet. You've got one foot in one world and one foot in the other. You're crossing the first threshold. And again, in Star Wars, think of Tatooine, where Luke grew up, and then going to that crazy bar. Once he joins up with Han and the rest of the community that's getting together, and agrees to go on this journey, they go to that crazy bar scene, and that's really the liminal place. That's where they connect and then are about to take the hyper jump to the rest of the journey. So as we cross the first threshold, none of the old rules apply, and this is the field of adventure. Now, there's a fascinating element that Campbell brings up at this stage, and he calls them the threshold guardian. The threshold guardian is often a monster or a demon or something that's in your way, blocking the path. And what do? Well, it's obviously bigger and stronger than you, so I guess you turn back and you go home. But what Campbell suggests is that the threshold guardian, this monster who blocks the way, if you can muster the courage to face this monster and defeat it, then you are granted passage. Every player of every video game knows this, that you have to face that obstacle, that monster, that demon, that foe, and defeat them. And when you defeat them, you are then granted passage to the next level. And you are given more weapons or more money or more powers or whatever, and you go on to that next level. You have proved your worthiness. Now, here's what Campbell argues, is that the threshold guardian, which at first appears to be an enemy or a monster, is really, at a deeper level, your ally. And here's why. Because when you muster the courage to face that guardian, that monster, that obstacle, and when you defeat it, not only have you proved your worthiness, but you have developed and cultivated the strengths and wit that you're going to need to survive at that higher level. If the threshold guardian just got out of the way and let you pass, you would get eaten alive at that next level. You're going to need some mojo up there. You're going to need some chops, some skills, some awareness. And your battle with the threshold guardian actually helps you cultivate that, as my favorite Roman Stoic philosopher Epictetus puts it. Our hardships introduce us to our strengths. So think of how daunting it is, some of my college students, filling out an application for the University of California. Because I'm here in Southern California teaching at a community college, and a lot of my students, not all, but a lot of them have their sights set on UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC San Diego, etc. The flagship higher education system of the great state of California, the UC system. And you go online and you start filling out your Common App, and it's really daunting to fill out an application for the University of California. It's a labyrinth of grueling paperwork, financial aid applications, putting an essay together. How's the money going to work out? I mean, it is a minefield. But think of it as a threshold guardian. The UC application process is a threshold guardian. And if you can't navigate it and figure out how to navigate it and articulate yourself in a certain way and have the discipline and the courage to stick with it, and also have the faith in yourself that you genuinely believe, even if just a little bit, that you belong on campus at UC Berkeley, at UCLA, some of the greatest universities on earth, that you have just enough faith in yourself to say yes. Throw my hat in the ring. Lots of students transfer to UC Berkeley and UCLA and UC San Diego from Southwestern College. Why not me? And so by saying yes and navigating the UC application process, then the UC application process, which I'm describing in this protracted metaphor, as a threshold guardian becomes an ally because it has cultivated certain skills that you're going to need as a student in a arduous but deeply rewarding academic track at the University of California. Does that make sense? Yeah, I don't know. But I'm trying to find real life examples of what threshold guardians are, because most of us aren't Dorothy, and we're not literally facing the Wicked Witch of the West, who is, by the way, an awesome threshold guardian. Yeah. So let's go to stage 5, the belly of the whale. Here, the final separation from the home world. Think Jonah. I mean, obviously, Campbell is drawing from the biblical tale of Jonah, who, as we said before, refused the call. And he went, God said, I want you to go to this town and preach my word. And he said, no, I'm going to go this other way. And he refused the call, and look what it cost him, right? He got on a ship. They sailed. God sent a storm. Everybody on the ship kind of realized the storm was because of Jonah, and they threw him overboard, and he agreed. So they threw him in the sea, and down he goes, and a great fish swallows him up. I know we call it the whale, but it's actually a fish in the Bible. Whatever. Obviously, a metaphorical story. For 3 days, Jonah was inside the belly of the whale. It's always 3 days. When Jesus goes into the tomb after his crucifixion, it's 3 days. When the moon goes dark, it's dark for 3 days before it begins to wax again. So myths have these numerological parallels all the time. So, and then the great fish spits Jonah out on the beach, right in the town where God was trying to send him to in the first place. So look what happens when you refuse the call. You not only put yourself in danger, you put everybody around you in danger. Talk about a pedagogical wisdom aspect of the refusal of the call. Now I'm going back a few stages. Let's come back to the belly of the whale. Look, this is a dark time in the hero cycle. Think the trash compactor in Star Wars. So Luke and Leia and Han and Chewbacca, they get to the Death Star, which was daunting enough, and then they go into the trash compactor. George Lucas is literally, he's got this book on his desk as he's writing this script. He says so. Look it up. Lucas and Campbell were friends, and when George Lucas storyboarded the whole first 3 films of the Star Wars trilogy, this is what he was thinking about. Each film is a standalone hero's journey. The 3 films are a hero's journey. And now looking at all 97 films or whatever it is now, they all form many, many epicycles of hero's journeys with scores of characters. But I'm telling you, the trash compactor is just almost a literal belly of the whale. Down they go, just like Jonah. And there's nasty liquid, I hope it's water, sloshing around and all kinds of trash. And of course, the walls start closing in. And that's a wonderful belly of the whale moment. And by the way, they can't rescue themselves, can they? They are rescued from without. And that's a stage we'll get to later in the cycle. C-3PO and R2-D2. Get them out. That is how the hero's journey works. You know, we're describing the hero's journey as a perfectly linear process through all 17 stages. You and I know better. We've seen all the movies and read the books and played the games. I mean, people who actually write these stories, it gets jumbled around and things happen in different order. But here we are in the belly of the whale. And this is a kind of ego death, a kind of annihilation. It's a total humility and total humiliation. A total loss of all known support systems. Nothing makes sense. You're literally in the dark. You're lost and you don't know how to get yourself out. It seems that everything is now hopeless. And you're in the tomb. But we remember, don't we, from our dying God work before that the tomb becomes a womb. You can count on that there will be an emergence. You know, just to think a little bit more maybe viscerally and poignantly about our own life. You know, when a parent gets that phone call at 2 a.m. and it's the police, or that knock on the door and they're telling you that your 19-year-old daughter has just been killed in a drunk driving accident. And I have friends who've been in that position, and I know you do too. We all have tragedy in our life. And think about, and some of you've gotten calls like this or had to navigate moments like this where a loved one died in violent crime or in an accident or in battle in some war on the other side of the world. That's the belly of the whale. You're hearing the news. There's a kind of physical shock. It's like the floor drops out from under you. You don't know where you are. You don't know what you are. You don't know who you are anymore. And this gut-wrenching moment is the belly of the whale. You're in the doctor's office. Your doctor's putting the x-rays up on the light boards, and you're saying, sorry, Peter, but this is stage 4. It's fully metastasized. I can prescribe some palliative care, some hospice care, but you need to get your affairs in order. Again, I'm fine. I'm making up hypotheticals here. But who has not lost a loved one to cancer and walked alongside them through that journey? So this is the belly of the whale, and it resonates deeply with me, and I know it resonates deeply with you. We're still only at the very beginning, but it seems to me the belly of the whale is that moment when you really die to your old life and you can't go back. You can't go back. This is the tornado that swallows up Dorothy and throws her into the other world, and she literally wakes up in Oz. And that cannot be undone. And since you can't go back, you just have to figure out, how the heck am I going to go forward from here? So that's the first third of the cycle, the departure phase of the cycle, and those 5 sub-stages that we just thought through. So we'll, kind of a cliffhanger, but we're going to have to leave it here in the belly of the whale. And those are the 5 stages. Now, what's going to happen next is that long middle passage, that bottom of the circle that Campbell calls the initiation. And there's 6 sub-stages here. And we'll divide it up over a couple of videos because they're intense and they're big, and we got to pull in as many examples as we can find. So we'll divide up the initiation into the next 2 videos, and then we'll take that final video to do the return as our hero comes back home with all of their transformations. So see you next time in the Hero's Journey, Part 3.